We have 4 levels: apprentice, advanced master, and master craftsman. If you did them all flawlessly without stop, it would take you 5 years to get through it. So you'd actually be taking more courses and getting more information than our master's and PhD students do at the university. We teach it. Is it perfect? Does it make beekeepers who don't lose colonies? No. But what it makes is it makes an undertow of beekeepers who are doing things different, and we're seeing loss rates go down. So we are transitioning. Please don't hear me negative. But part of our desire to get into commercial beekeeper operations is to transition the Master Beekeeper program fully online so that we are not needed to do it, so that we can start putting our people and our resources into commercial outfits. So our Master Beekeeper program is in the process of transitioning online. Half of the apprentice level is already online. We're trying not to advertise it. The reason we went up and put half online is because the demand was so high that we couldn't wait until we got done with the whole thing, otherwise people would have tarred and feathered us. So without advertising, we probably have 120 people in it. And that outside of the online, we've got about 500 people over the years who joined it, ish. We keep statistics related to the number of, in upper levels of the Master Beekeeper program, there's requirements that you have to go out and teach others. We keep those stats, and our Master Beekeepers or people in the program to date have reached over 5 million non-beekeepers with messages about bees. So we know the impact that this thing's having. I know what you're thinking online would be worse. We can teach you better online than we can teach you face-to-face. I promise you we can. Because we can say it and do it right. We can update it regularly. You can watch it at your own pace, on your smartphone, on your smart TV, on your computer. It will be self-paced. How are we going to do the hands-on stuff? You're going to video yourself working a bee colony and upload the videos that we can grade remotely. My point is there's ways to do this, and we're confident that it's going to build better trained. Not perfect. There's no substitute for experience, but better trained beekeepers. So that's it in a nutshell. And we fully expect, once we finish the first level and actually formal advertising, to be in the thousands, just based on demand. Yes, sir.
I have a question about, you say we only have one species.
Yep.
And I think back about, we have a banana problem, from what I read, that there's only one kind of banana in the world and it's having a virus and it's having problems. Isn't it an idea to maybe crossbreed some of these to make better resistance?
His question is essentially like, because we only have one species, do we have a low genetic diversity in the U.S.? Okay. The fact that it is a species means that it cannot interbreed with other species. So we cannot cross the non-species. What we can do is we can cross within a species the different races. So yes, the good news is that the genetic diversity of Apis mellifera is still through the roof. And the vast majority of that genetic diversity is in Africa. I'm telling you, the bees in South Africa, the ones that we know so well, are so genetically diverse that when we take 2 colonies from the same apiary, they almost look like 2 different subspecies. It's just unbelievable. So the point that I'm trying to make is that one of the things that people say about bee losses is that we just have a poor diversity of honeybees in the U.S. because since the late 1920s, early 1920s, we've not been able to import bees because of the trachea lines. So they think that we've got this bottleneck where there's a few producers of breeder queens who are producing the vast majority of queens that we use in our operations. But at the moment, there's no evidence that the genetic diversity in the States is lacking. Even if it was, it is so great in the Middle East and Africa that we've got that resource available if we ever needed it. That's a great question. Yes, sir.
What would you tell hobbyists to always do when they're at their hives, and what would you tell us to stop doing when we're at our hives?
Okay. One of the things I would tell hobbyists to do, the question was, what would you tell hobbyists to always do, and what would you tell them to never do? One of the things I would tell them to always do is always have a sense of what the varroa populations are when you're in your hives. Now, I recommend to people that they sample colonies once a month, especially hobbyists, because it's hard, unless you know what you're looking for, it's hard to see the problem. So I would tell hobbyists once a month they need to sample varroa. The varroa is the #1 killer of honeybees on the planet, and in my opinion, hobbyists do not do enough to kill varroa, period. So in my opinion, if you could address your varroa issues forcefully and appropriately, your loss rates are going to plummet and most of your problems will be solved. So that would be the thing that I preach. A second thing is I would teach people how to recognize quality queens and encourage them to be there and to fix it when they're not. A lot of hobbyists are so happy that they have a queen in their hive that they'll take a queen that lays 1 egg a week. And I would emphasize being able to recognize when there are queen issues and being able to eliminate that. So I'm just giving you 2 things. And with regard to nutrition, I would make sure that there's enough honey, enough high quality pollen. You do those 3 things, if you learn to recognize those things every time you're in hives, you're going to be mostly a good bee. What I would tell hobbyists not to do is freak out all the time they don't see something, or that they see something that they don't understand. I get a lot of those kind of freak out emails and phone calls. Honeybees, despite the fact that there was a hurricane, or despite the fact that they're a varroa or whatever, they're remarkably resilient. And even if we find a way to kill them, there's always the next colony to get. So I would say to hobbyists, just kind of stop and smell the roses, keep everything in perspective, and just when you're working a hive, don't freak out when you see something that you think is a problem. Talk to other beekeepers, try to be calm down, and know that everything is fixable. If not in that hive, with the next hive. I would also tell them maybe don't work them too much, or smoke them too much, or move your feet when you. I tell you that the greatest thing that I've ever done, and I love it, is when my supervisor, my mentor, this is a bee colony, and this is the entrance. He always told me to stand beside it and never move my feet. And I've always done that. If you ever work bees with me, you'll see that my feet never move. When I move supers, I'm never stepping on bees. I'm never stepping. And what I say is, never make sudden, jerky movements. When you watch a beekeeper who knows what they're doing, it's almost like you're watching a conductor. It's fluid, purposeful movements. Everything's great. You're watching an artist. So I would just tell hobbyists to calm down, don't move your feet, and just don't jerk and be crazy. Don't panic. There's lots of don'ts. Time for a couple more? Yeah, go ahead. All right, couple more.
How are you funded, and you're funding it all at risk?
How am I funded, or is my funding at all at risk? All right. There's a long answer and a short answer to that question. All right. And I'm not going to tell you the long answer because it will bog me down. But we are funded from individuals, from beekeeping associations, from state and federal government, and from industry. We essentially take money from anyone who's willing to give it, as long as it is a project that we believe in. How it usually works is that there will be a grant call for proposals, say for example from the USDA. And we'll say, hey, varroa is a big problem. We write a proposal, send it to the USDA and say, if you'll give us this much money, here's the project we'll do. So to address your second question of risk, we are only able to get funding as good as our ideas are. So when we submit that proposal, we're competing with everyone else who submitted proposals to the USDA. So as long as bees remain a hot topic, the money is available to do research on bees. If the next thing ever replaced bees, then our funding pools would be diverted to the next thing and we would all be fighting and scrapping for money. One of the good things that the bee losses have done is it's produced a lot of bee researchers at universities that didn't have bee researchers. One of the bad side effects of that, though, is even if the pool of funding is slightly bigger, the pool of researchers is much bigger, so it's a lot more people fighting for a little bit more money. So that's always the risk of funding, is the competition being too high or the resources being too low. So it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. But incidentally, we can't just take money. Well, how do I explain this? I don't want to bog you down. Anybody can fund research. You could write a check to us to fund research. But there's only 2 ways we can receive money from anybody. One is an unrestricted free gift, which means you give us money with no restrictions on it. That means you give it to us, but cannot demand anything in return. It's an unrestricted free gift. If we receive money that way, we're under no obligation to do anything at all that the funder won't. The beauty is that's an easier way to receive money. The downside is the funder is taking a risk that we won't do something of interest. The second way is to get it through a grant or industry center. To do that means there's a contract in place between the University of Florida and the Funding Institute, and we have to spend the money on exactly what we said we'd spend the money on, and we can't use this project's money for that project's work. It's federally illegal. So if we get it as an unrestricted free gift, the beauty is we are it's flexible, we can do whatever we want to in it. The downside is with the funding. If we get it through a grant, we are extremely controlled on what we can do with it. And the good news is, for the funder, they know what they're getting in return. And funders, despite what most people think, are never looking for something they want to happen. Well, they're never trying, how do I say this in a way that's politically sensitive? I have never been approached by any funder ever who wanted me to find a certain thing. They were only funding projects to answer the question, does this thing happen or not? And we've been funded by chemical companies, we've been funded by beekeepers, we've been funded by the government, and despite the views out there about how funding is done, we literally have to have contracts in place between us and those people who fund us, to where we are legally bound to not be influenced. So it's a lot more complicated than that, but there you go. I've talked a lot. This is a slide that you can take a picture of for the next 5 seconds. And then I'm probably going to let you guys do your thing and sneak off to the side, because I got a 3-hour, 15-minute trip with my 5-year-old. So it's been a great talk to you guys.